Alrighty, so just to kind of go over the calendar, this whole week we lost a day because of Labor Day, so we're trying to condense as much information as possible. Basically 5 days of information into 4 days. Tomorrow I'll be back. We're going to do a retro, which is basically a review of the entire week of common software engineering practice. We're also going to be doing a Beyond Tech. This is our soft skills curriculum that I'll be teaching as well, and it's how to give and receive feedback and why that's important inside the technology world. Next week, I'll cover imposter syndrome, which I'm sure many of you are feeling at this particular moment. You have TAs, so you get pretty much coverage from 8 a.m. when we first come in, and we're usually here by like 7:40, 7:45, until 7:30 in the evening. So you do have 12 hours of coverage with professional software engineers and/or teachers. Your first assessment will be next Friday. I did get a question on what's going on with all of these challenges. These challenges are mostly for us to get an idea of where you are. We're not grading these because there are 15 of you, and you've seen in some days you're going to have 8 challenges, so that's 120 pull requests that we have to go through, which is not a good use of anybody's time. So this is just for you to practice opening pull requests, and for us to take a look. Okay, let's take a look at how Marcus is doing today. Okay, he doesn't understand this. Maybe we'll talk to him about that. We're not grading any of these. The more you do, the better off you'll be. What we're really grading you on is going to be the 5 assessments that I've kind of laid out here. We're going to have 3 assessments in the first 4 weeks. You have 1 retake. So if you don't pass, which is a 75% or higher, we will give you the chance to retake. You get 1 retake. And you have until the end of the course to do that. Specifically, this day. I'm just going to put that in there so there's no arguments. 9 a.m., all assessment retakes due. We're good? And then next Friday, there's a person named Kelly Cronin from ThoughtWorks who is going to be coming in to talk about team building and the importance of teams in today's tech world. I'll go over into more of what ThoughtWorks does, a product company versus a consultancy, but we're going to jump into this code over here. There's a few things I wanted to review today. I wanted to talk about Git and GitHub, the IDE, and then go into JavaScript and Python fundamentals. So we've got GitHub. Who can explain to me what GitHub actually is? Go for it.
I'm not.
It doesn't have to be eloquent. I just want to know kind of what you think GitHub is.
I think it's a means of sharing and collaborating on work.
Okay.
But honestly, I don't very well. It's really.
That's not incorrect answer. It's a partial answer, but it's not an incorrect answer. It is a way that we can share work back and forth. Marcus, yeah, it's a way to kind of manage when you have multiple people working on one project, several different versions of it. That's kind of what it does. So it's a way that we can manage versions of particular bits of work. Cool. Anybody else? Git and GitHub? How about let's start with Git. We talk about GitHub being just a place that we can gather information and work collaboratively, but what is Git?
It is the utility on the local computer that allows you to access the central repository.
Unfortunately, no. Partially true, but Git is actually it's just version control software. It's built into your machine, and that's, I guess you're partially right. But the answer I'm going for is it's just version control software. And the way that we can think about it is how many times have people been writing a paper for college, or back in the old days when we had floppy disks and then Windows 95 would crash suddenly and then you'd lose all your work, right? And you wish, gosh, I really wish I would have pressed save a little bit earlier. I would have recovered all of my work. That's a little bit about where Git came from. So it's a way that we can automatically save our work so that we can come back to different versions at different times. Now, if you take a look at Factorial and take a look over here on this left side where 8 commits are, you can see that there are 8 versions of this that I've created. Basically, I've updated this particular folder called Factorial 8 times. On January 25th, 2017, when I first started teaching Platoon, and Mike was in that first platoon with me, this was the original commit. And if I ever wanted to take a look at this particular point in time, I would click on this. this weird looking series of letters and numbers. And then I could take a look. This is what the code looks like at this particular point in time. So when I'm using Git, I can use a series of commands to basically put its, how do I say this effectively? I can essentially track the changes that I've made over time. If you go to Google Docs, and this curriculum calendar should be put up on your, inside the first page of your curriculum. Google Docs is an example of kind of like Git, but it does it automatically for you. So if I click on this, you can see that there's a particular version history that already shows up. So I can track this all the way back to, I think, 2016, even before I started, because we were trying to create a calendar. If I wanted to take a look at this, I can click on it, and it'll go back to this particular version. It's more or less the same. We've moved a few things around, but Google Docs automatically takes care of this for me. I just start typing it, it automatically saves. Git, I'm gonna have to like manually actually type it in. So Git is just version control software, and GitHub is the place that we upload all of those Git repositories to. It's basically a Dropbox for code. It's a Dropbox for code, and it essentially just tracks all of our changes for us. So let's do Factorial together. We're going to run through the whole Git workflow, and then we will basically do a code review of somebody's code and just kind of see what's their code look like. Is it looking good? What needs to be changed? So I've got this particular code up here. It's Juliett Platoon /Factorial, and the first thing I want to do is I want to fork it. What is forking? Let's hear from someone who hasn't spoken yet.
Like creating a path through GitHub. We're not creating a path.
Yes.
But you can access it.
Yes. Technically, yes. So forking is what she said. It is creating basically a photocopy. When I do click on fork and I fork to this account, to my JM217, you can kind of see this cute little emoticon down here that's just saying I'm making a photocopy. Essentially, the way that I like to think of this is that Juliett Platoon /Factorial, this one that's actually this factorial repository, this bit of code belongs to Juliett Platoon. Now, imagine Juliett Platoon and Factorial, Juliett Platoon's version of Factorial to be kind of like you found the original Bible in the middle of the desert somewhere, wherever the original Bible is. You want to make some changes to it. Would you ever write on the original Bible? Probably not. They probably wouldn't let you. You'd probably live in the Smithsonian. But what you can do if you want to make any changes to it is that you can make a photocopy of all the pages, and then you can mess around with it. This way, when I mess around with JYoung217 Factorial, it doesn't mess with the original. That's kind of what we're doing here. When I press fork, I'm just making a photocopy over to here. So I press that fork button. It takes me to JM217, and I'm just kind of hanging out here now. How do I which command do I run to bring this particular code that lives on the internet on github.com right now? How do I bring that and download it to my computer? Someone who hasn't spoken here. We're going to go, John.
You do clone.
You clone, okay. So clone or download. So I'm just going to click on this bright green button. There's a little clipboard right here. I click on that. And I see that VS Code is open. Can you talk to me about what VS Code is, John?
VS Code is a platform through which you can do text editing and coding.
Yep. And
also utilize an internal terminal to run code, open files, change directories. There's plugins that enable you to more freely and expressively code, I guess you could say.
Sure. Yeah. So VS Code is an example of what's called an integrated development environment, or an IDE. This is what's called a GUI IDE. It stands for Graphical User Interface. There are more advanced, there are other non-GUI based IDEs. So a GUI based IDE is the one where you can click around and you can double click on things. If you want to open this denominations, I just double click in and it just opens up magically for me. like the ability to click around and go to line 26 with a mouse. Anything that you can click on, anything that you can drag and drop, that's called a GUI interface, graphical user interface. Normal computers are graphical user interface. Anything you can do normal computing stuff is graphical user interface. There's also the ability to use a text-based editor, which is I have no mouse. So I could do, if I wanted to open up something in Vim, Vim is an example of something that's not a graphical user interface. I can't, where's my line numbers? I don't know. How come I can't click on anything? Like it's not doing what I want. I want to go to this line. It doesn't actually work. There's a bunch, basically a non-graphical user interface IDE. I have to use my keyboard all the time to click on everything. To insert anything, to append anything, to remove anything, it's all done through the keyboard. We don't want you to do that. So the IDE, VS Code in particular, has the capability to both write and execute code all from one place. So let's go over some commands. How do I change from where I'm at right now to the desktop? CD space desktop. And you can kind of see we have given these colors to you so that it should match up exactly so you know exactly where you are. All right, how do I clone that thing that I just copied? Silas.
Git clone.
Sorry, Silas.
Git clone space the URL.
Git clone space the URL. Very good. So we got git clone, and then I'm going to paste that URL. Any git command is going to have git in the front. That's the way that you can tell it's a git command. All right, so if I go to the desktop, and you can kind of see I have a few things on my desktop open right now. I got a curriculum folder, an interview folder, self-paced curriculum, and I don't know what that is. But I don't have something called Factorial. Once I do git clone, I'm going to download, I'm telling Git to clone, also known as download, all the code found on this particular URL to my machine. So I'm bringing it from the internet down to my machine. You can kind of see Factorial just showed up over here. How do I change from, I'm inside the desktop right now, but I want to get inside of Factorial. Anybody, remote?
Change directory factorial. CD
So
factorial.
like that?
No, CD factorial.
CD factorial, very good. So CD factorial. And you can kind of see I've changed from where I'm at in the desktop to factorial right over here. Now, the very first thing, did we talk about branches? No? Okay. If I talked about branches, let's not do that yet. All right, so let's just open this particular folder up and not the entire desktop. How do I open just the factorial folder up?
LS.
LS is listening. Code, and then what?
Period.
R. So code-r space dot. So I could do code and then dot, because it would say, using VS Code, open everything open this current file path. But what's going to happen, you'll see, is that another window shows up. Now I got two windows to deal with, and I got a bunch of windows. Like I know that I just want this window open. The command that we can run is going to be code-r space dot. This space is the same thing, but I add this little -r. The -r here, the -r is basically saying, open up everything within this particular window. Close out everything else that's open right now and just open it within this particular window. So you'll see that this window refreshes and I've only got one thing open, which is this JS, this factorial right over here. Now, let's take a look at factorial and see what it says. All right, in this exercise, did everyone do this? Let's find out. Yep, pretty much everyone did this. So in this exercise, we're going to create a function that takes a number parameter and returns the factorial of it. So a factorial has a very specific definition. Basically, it's the result of multiplying a sequence of numbers descending down to 0. Factorials are defined only for non-negative integer numbers. So that basically says it has to be positive and it has to be a whole number. And this definition includes 0. 0 factorial is equal to 1, so treat it as an edge case. I'm just going to copy all of this. But we know that factorial of 4 is 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And then when I multiply that all together, I get 24. Now, the human brain is an extraordinary thing where if I told you, Dan, what's the factorial of 5? Is that 120, sure. But you were able to process that super fast because the human brain is an amazing thing. Computers are faster than you, but stupider than you. Well, for now, until AI takes over and we're all dead. But right now, computers are much faster than you, but they're also a lot dumber. So you have to tell it literally every single thing that you want it to do. If you had to explain, we're going to do something called pseudocode, which is basically like writing quasi-code before actually writing code, and we're going to translate those steps. So we're going to start off by just saying we need to write out every single step for us, but we need to basically create a blueprint for ourselves to write this code in order to write this code. So let's say we know that the factorial of 3 is going to give me 3 times 2 times 1, and that's also equal to 6. We need to write a program that does that. So the way that I think about it is, and I would usually ask for more input, but I'm running a little low on time, is I'm just going to start writing out steps that I need to take in order to actually write this out. So maybe the first thing is write a method in JavaScript called factorial. I generally capitalize everything that is like code related so that I have an easy way to reference it. Okay. Factorial takes in a parameter called, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Number, sure. And that's the first step. What is the next thing that we do? Like, how do we know it's 3 times 2 times 1 and it gives me 6, but like, how do I, like, we know that in our head, but the computer doesn't know anything. What's the next thing that we should probably do?
Check to make sure it's an integer.
So we can check to make sure that it is an integer, but it says factorials are only defined for non-negative integers. So I'm going to say, sure, if you want to do that, I don't mind. So we need to check that the number, again, those capital letters are going to help you out a bit, is actually a non-negative integer number. If number is not a non-negative integer number, return must enter a non-negative integer number and exit. Make sense? So you got to make sure whatever you're passing in is actually a number. I like that. So let's say that we magically can do this. Again, we're not worried about implementation. These are the steps that we're going to take. We can Google around for how to actually implement this. What do I do next? So let's say I pass in 3. I verify 3 is a number. It's non-negative and it's an integer. So it's above 0 and it's not a decimal point.
Set a variable.
Cool, I like it. Set a variable. What do you want to call it? I'm going to call it output.
Okay.
And what did you want to set it equal to?
The input.
To the equal to number.
Oh.
Cool. What are you going to do next? So right now I've got output equals to 3.
We need to put it somewhere. I don't know how pseudocode is. I would say put it to a array, but I don't know if that's how we want to find it out at this point.
We could do an array. What is another way? So what do you notice about these numbers? Okay, so I'm hearing people say it's decrementing by 1. Is there a place where it stops? Stops at 1. Oh, cool. Let's do that. So we're going to set up a for loop. Set up a loop that starts at, I'm actually going to set this equal to 1. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You could do, I mean, there are multiple ways of solving this. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying that you're right either. but this is the way that I think of it. I just like to have an output that is equal to 1 because any number times 1 is the other number. So I'm going to set up a loop that starts at number and goes down by 1 until number is equal to 1. What do I do within this loop? I'm running something. It's becoming smaller and smaller every time. And that's what I did on line 11.
You use a decrement operator.
I am decrementing by 1. That's actually multiplying by, yeah. You are multiplying each number. So you're setting up this loop, you're starting a number, and you're multiplying that by into what number? Cool. Okay. Set output equal to output times number. So hopefully I've gone through everything at this point. Let's think through this. I write a factorial method called factorial. It takes in a parameter called number right there. We want to check. We'll figure this out later. We set a variable output equal to 1. And we're going to set up a loop that starts at 3, because that's what we're starting with, and goes down to 1, goes down by 1 until number equals 1. And then we set output to output times number. So the first time through is 1 times 3, 1 times 2, and 1 times 3, then that's 3 times 2, then 6 times 1. What do I do at the very end? We want to return output. This is an example of pseudocode. Now, it doesn't take this, it's not this fast. I've done this 1,000 times, and I've done this example, and you all have done this yesterday, so it's not usually this fast. It doesn't take 6 minutes like when we first started till now. But this gives you a very, very clear roadmap of what you actually need to do. In order, these are the steps that you need to do in order. Now, when I write this in JavaScript, I can also translate this over to Python. That's what we're going to do a little bit later today. So I'm just going to copy this, just cut it, open up the JavaScript file, jump over into factorial, and I'm going to just throw this here and comment it out. What are comments? Yeah, it's just text. By appending it with these 2 forward slashes, the computer will ignore it when it runs. So I am going to get rid of this for right now, and I'll talk about exports in just a little bit. So I've got a function. I'm just going to translate all the stuff we did straight into code. Create a method in JavaScript called factorial. Done. Factorial takes in a parameter called number. Check that the number is actually a non-negative integer number. So I don't know how to do that. So I'm going to ask trusty Google, because Google is my friend. JavaScript, how to tell if input is a number. We're just professional Googlers, honestly, as web developers. I can tell you at all levels, including at the senior level, we just Google things all day. And that there's no shame in that. There are some things that I memorized, and most things I have to look up because I just don't have that brain capacity. I'm just going to look. This looks like it's something. I got a blog. I also have Stack Overflow. I'm going to go to Stack Overflow because I'm going to it's a little easier. So Stack Overflow is a website that people use to basically talk about code. Anything that you have an issue with, someone has probably asked it on Stack Overflow. The way that this works is at the very top, I have the question itself, and then underneath it, the answer that is basically agreed upon by the community. These numbers on the side are basically saying 62 people also had this exact same question. It was starred 14 times, and the agreed upon answer, this green check mark, was upvoted 101 times. So you can trust that maybe this is the best answer. This 27 down here is also pretty decent, but there will probably be one with like a 0. Nobody really cares about these ones down here. So just go all the way to the very top. We can take a look. All right, this is not great because it looks like there's some HTML stuff, but it was a good shot. Let's jump back to this first one over here. Okay, looks like there's an example called is NaN. What is NaN? Not a number. It is NaN num1. Okay, so it looks like there's a built-in method inside of JavaScript that will determine for me whether or not a number is actually a number. So let's jump back. So if is NaN number, if this is not a number, then I'm going to say, I'm going to return must be a non-negative number and exit. Looks like this is unhappy with me. No, it's built in. Should be built in. Let's test this out. Factorial of Apple. What do you think should be the output of this? Pardon?
The second is the number is that all have to be.
Cool. So basically, we've got if-else check. If some condition, then return this. So this should return, must enter a non-negative number. Let's find out. So I've opened up the terminal down over here using the hotkeys control and then the backtick. It's the one to the left of the one key. Control backtick will put it away. Control backtick will bring it up again. How do I run a JavaScript file? Okay, I like that. So let's list out everything that we have. We're going to cd into JavaScript because we were in the wrong folder. You can see before we were in desktop factorial. Now we're in desktop factorial JavaScript. And let's list out everything one more time. We want to run this file. I heard someone say it's node. I'm going to do factorial.js. Nothing comes out. What's that? Nope, I got to return. Yeah, let's just console log. Must enter a non-negative integer, and then we'll return. So this console log is mostly for us so that it gives us some sort of feedback, and then it's going to return, meaning it's going to fully exit the program at this point. Hopefully this works. Must enter a non-negative integer number. Cool. So we've just solved this first one here. All right. Next, we're going to set a variable called output and set that equal to 1. Okay, good. Set up a loop that starts off at number, goes down by 1 until number equals 1. So we should have done the pre-work. I think we're all set. I'm just going to go for it. For let I equal 0, I is greater than 1. I minus minus. Sorry. Feel good? There's that for loop right over here, where we start at the number, so we set I equal to the number, as long as I is greater than 1, so we're going to ignore 1 because we already have 1 right over here. And we're going to decrement by 1 each time until this case is true. So this is the starting point, this is the ending condition, and this is what we're doing each time through the loop. It's going to do output times equals I, and then return output. Sorry. What's that? Does it happen to cover? Let's see this work first, and then I'm guessing that we
because number will never be greater than 1, so the for loop will never run.
Actually, that's what I meant to do. I'm genius. Not really. But yes, you are correct. Let's take a look at this. Let's do 3. I'm going to clear this screen down here by typing in clear and pressing enter and writing up node factorial. I just press up twice. It records everything that you type into the console. So if I press up, it'll just kind of list out everything that I've done. I can also press down to go down to it as well. Press enter, and what the hell? Yeah. So the return here is for the computer. The console is for us. So if we want to see it, I'm just going to do console.log that output. Please work. 6. Perfect. All right, so let's go back. There's a few things I want to change. Function is old school JavaScript. So that's ES5, which is from like 2013, 2014. So it's an older way of writing this. What's another way to write a method?
Like factorial function.
This is called a fat arrow function. The new way of writing functions. It's the same thing as just writing function factorial number, and then the body of the code. It just looks slightly different. I don't want to get too caught up in the weeds right now, as we're just starting to like ramp up here. But this is ES6, like the newest, like agreed upon version. So most new JavaScript code that you'll see will look something like this. This is what's called a fat arrow function. So it's a constant because it's an entire method. It's not going to change once I define it. I set that basically factorial is equal to this whole thing. It takes in a number, has a fat arrow, and then has the body. That's it. Instead of doing function factorial, I'll just do const factorial equals. It still takes in that parameter, no fat arrow, and then I start the function. All right. So we created our pseudocode. Let's make sure that this still runs. 6. And let's check with 5. We said that was 120. Looks like it works. Let's bring back the exports, because the exports is a little strange. The exports is basically when we run one file, we can run it straight from the command line. When we want to use code that's in a file in a different file, so you'll see on line 1 it says var fact is equal to require factorial. I want to bring in all of the code from factorial.js into factorial spec.js. Factorial spec.js is the spec file, which is basically just a test file. So I basically want to check that when I run fact, which is the entire file, dot factorial of 8, I get this. I want to make sure that 18 gives me this, and that 45 gets me that. So we can just see if this works. I'm going to bring back exports. I think it's exports dot factorial is equal to, I don't know how to do this. Let's go jump back real quick. Exports factorial number, and I'm just going to copy all of this code. Quick fun thing, you can either cut and paste, or you can hold down Control, Command, press up, 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 and move the entire block of code. Small things to make your life a little bit easier. Now I do need to have a return here, because this is a computer running it at this point, and we're not printing it out. Let's just make sure that this runs. I'm going to clear the screen. I'll make this a little bit bigger. List out everything. I'm going to run node factorial spec.js. Please give me a bunch of trues. True, true, and false. Oh, God. Same thing happened to you because it's too big. Yeah. So basically what's happened is when we do 45, the number should come out like this, but what ends up happening is your computer will kind of condense it down into scientific notation, which will eventually translate into this, but
I tried biggins, I tried number, I tried everything.
it's fine. It's fine. That's not the purpose of this particular exercise. Are there any questions on pseudocode? This is what I generally recommend. I'm going to open a pull request for this. So let's walk through that process. I'm going to clear the screen. How do I check the status of everything that I've done so far? All right, so I have Git. I know that's how I know I'm running some sort of Git command, and I run status. Now what's happened here is I've cloned down, or I've downloaded this particular folder called factorial from the web into my machine right here. There's 2 red things. These are the changes that I've made that are different from what they see on the web. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it. So you can kind of think of this as a giant box. Let's say you're, someone cares about you. They have a care package. They've got an empty box. Right now, they've got factorial and factorial spec.js. And they say, I want to add that inside the box. So how do I add inside? Let's go with someone from remote. Let's go with whoever just cleared their throat. Let's go with.
Add dot.
Yep, I could do that. I'm going to do git add and then dot. Right now it's okay because there's only 2 files inside of here. But when you start working on bigger projects in about 7 weeks or so, there's might be 10, 15 files that you've changed all at one time. So I don't particularly like git add dot, though it will work. In this particular case, we'll use it because there's only 2 things, and that's okay. I'm going to do git add dot, and when I run git status again, you'll see that it turned from red to green, basically saying, this was not in the care package that you wanted to send to me. Now it is. But just because it's in the care package doesn't mean that it's actually being ready to be shipped off to you. Let's say that I want to write a little note and I want to seal the box. How do I seal the box? What's the next step that I take? Yeah. Dash M. What does dash M mean? Yep. And then you can put either single or double quotes as long as it's consistent. So you want these to be as descriptive as possible. This is a message that basically says, this is what I did at this point. All right. If you take a look at my commits, some of them are okay. I removed GitHub. We changed it from Ruby to Python. Somebody said that there's a definition of factorial that you need to update. There's also commit logs from last night. I mean, let's think about it. It's kind of funny to read, right? Like, but let's think about this for a quick second. You are a developer working on this 3 years in the future. Is this something that's useful for you at this point? You're looking through the log history. You're like, okay, it's broken, it's broken, it's broken. Everyone else has descriptive stuff. And then, like, what am I supposed to do with that? That doesn't tell me what I've done at this point. So while it's funny, and this does happen more often than you would think, you want these to be as descriptive as possible. So wrote the code to finish factorial in JavaScript and added specs and pseudocode. So I did git commit -m. I wrote a little message, and then at this point you can kind of consider the box sealed. I put the label on it. I put the tape over the top. It's good to go. How do I send it off to the post office so that they can get it to you? That's the last one. Git push origin. Yeah, origin refers to where you cloned it from. So I cloned it from JYoung, the 4th version, and not from Juliett. So when I do git push origin master, that's this branch, this name over here. It sends it from my machine. It no longer lives on my particular machine. And if I go up to this over here, you'll see there it is. Okay. You'll see that I wrote the code to finish factorial in JavaScript and added specs and blah, blah, blah. Before there were 8 commit messages, and now there are none. Now, at this point, JYoung217/factorial is all set up, and I want to create a pull request. I guess let's define what a pull request is. Okay. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So the way that, we're about to open a pull request. So the way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to hit new pull request. And I'm going to say that I want to put this inside of, where the heck is Juliett? I know I spelled Juliett Platoon wrong. It's going to bother me the whole class. And I want to compare that to JYoung217. Why is that not there? Maybe I'll open it from, I have to open it from here. So from JYoung217/factorial, I'm going to open a new pull request. And I'm going to open it against Juliett Platoon Factorial's master branch. Giant green button. Before there were 9 pull requests, and now there are 10. A pull request is nothing more than saying, this is the code that I've changed that's different from the original. I want to take my changes and merge them in. That's pretty much it. When we look at it, I'm just going to click on Files Changed over here. The red is what you removed. The green is what you added. Let us take a look at somebody's code for factorial, and we're going to, does anybody want me to tear it apart? I feel kind of bad, but it's my job. Okay. Okay. So there's also like a code review process. You haven't set up your Git setup. You have to sign in with your email. Remember the first thing we did Git config the email.
I did a verify.
Is it the same email that you use to log in? Yeah, somewhere along the line it didn't work. All right, so let's take a look. The good part about having all of our code here, it allows me to basically look inside of it and say, like, this is what's wrong with it, this is good with it. All right, so let's take a look. We got exports factorial. If number is equal to 0 or number is equal to 1, return 1, spacing. This has to go in. Indent this by 2 spaces. I'm going to add starter review. When we are writing this type of stuff, we do want to move it in. Also, you're missing I mean, this is purely just for syntax at this point. I would recommend having curly braces. So you should probably have a curly brace right there, indent this, and then a closing curly brace. Also missing closing curly brace. All right, so I got for I equals 0. I would also declare what type of variable I is. Is it a const or a let? Did we talk about const and let? Okay. So just to review, const, the way that we used to do determining what a variable was in JavaScript is just var some variable. This was fine. It worked for many years, but now we're changing it to const, which is when I create a constant called some variable, this is something that won't change. Most of the time, you probably won't be using const. This is for things like force of gravity, the name of the method, because the method contents probably won't change. If it's something that you know that will change, like let age equal 5, because your age is going to change every single year. I'm going to discard this change, but you just said I equals no. That's fine. Spacing is pretty decent. Spacing is good. You don't really need semicolons anymore. Console log the number, that's not right. You need to return the number. And that, other than that, it works well. So pretty decent, but that's generally the process. A more senior person will come in and basically tear your stuff apart. That's kind of what happened to me too. So I've only been there at FMO for 6 weeks. The very first thing I put in, I was like, I think I'm pretty decent, and it just got annihilated by people with 10 years more experience than me. So it's just a pretty normal thing. I feel like this is a good stopping point. Let's take 5 minutes. We'll come back at 9 o'clock, and then we'll go straight to 10. At this point, I'm going to stop the recording.